Welcome to the Marsal Family School of Education's Innovator Showcase series. This series connects you to people, ideas, and innovations that are transforming education in the United States and around the world. My name is Don Purok. I'm a professor of educational policy, leadership, and innovation in the Marsal School. Today's conversation features Barry Fishman, a colleague and professor in the Marsal School. We'll be discussing Barry's work as chair of Learning, Equity, and Problem Solving for the Public Good, or LEAPS, an exciting new undergraduate program in the Marsal School. Please join me in welcoming Barry to the Innovator Showcase. So it's my honor today to welcome Barry Fishman to the Marsal Education Innovator Showcase series. Welcome, Barry.
Thanks, Don. It's really a pleasure to be here.
So to get started, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your research and your teaching here in the Marsal Family School of Education at the University of Michigan.
I've had the privilege of being on the faculty here at the Marsal Family School of Education for 28 years, basically my entire professional career. And over that time, I've focused primarily on technology and how technology enhances and sometimes impedes learning. I'm a learning scientist by training. That is a field that focuses on technology on the one hand, but also largely on how to design the most effective learning environments. And sometimes those learning environments are in the classroom, but more often they're in the world. They're workplace learning, lifelong or life-wide learning, we call it sometimes. You learn in all kinds of contexts. It's kind of a basic of the human condition is that we are always learning, and if we're not always learning, then we're bored or frustrated or something. But we're always essentially trying to take in new information and incorporate it into how we understand the world. For me, I've thought about that in my instruction here at Marsal, focused on how we design highly engaging learning environments. A course I've long taught is called Transformative Teaching and Learning with Technology. The takeaway from that course is technology doesn't transform learning. Good teaching transforms learning, and technology can be helpful. Over the years, I've become very interested in how some of the soft technologies of education, like grading systems and assessment approaches, shape the way people engage with learning. That led to the development of a theory called gameful learning, which looks at really well-designed games and asks, how does a game get you to do hard things, to persist through challenge and even failure toward ultimate improvement and someday success? And why does school not look like that? How could we design school to be a better game? That led to the design of a tool we call GradeCraft that has been used by thousands of learners across the University of Michigan and at many other institutions. And it also eventually leads to thinking about how we structure educational environments in college in general, which is a part of the thinking that led us toward a program like LEAPS.
So LEAPS, what does LEAPS stand for?
LEAPS stands for Learning, Equity, and Problem Solving for the Public Good. Kind of a mouthful, so we usually say LEAPS. But it is essentially about how do you create learning that is equitable, that is approachable and valuable to people from all different walks of life, coming from all different perspectives, that is in the service of a public good, and recognizing that much of what we're trying to learn for is to solve problems. So what are the challenging problems that the public faces that we don't think we can necessarily always solve, but can we make productive progress towards them? That's what LEAPS is about, is becoming someone who is ready to participate in taking on some of the biggest challenges that we face.
So in the ways that you were just describing, LEAPS seems like a sort of realization of teaching and learning as understood within the learning sciences.
Absolutely. LEAPS in many ways builds on the 25, 30 plus years of thinking in the field about the most effective context for teaching and learning, the most important context for teaching and learning, and how to shape the environment around us in a way that enables learners, newcomers, to be what we might call legitimate participants in challenging real-world activities. That's at the heart of LEAPS.
If a prospective student were to contact you and ask you about the LEAPS program, how would you introduce it to them? And how might you introduce it in a way that would really have them interested in motivating and joining the program?
That's a great question. I think a lot of the reason that brings people to a school of education in the first place is they're interested in learning and teaching, and they're interested in participating in that world in some way. LEAPS is a 4-year program. You enter right out of high school, leads to a bachelor's degree in education, but not necessarily teaching. Teaching is one possibility for students entering into LEAPS, but LEAPS is primarily about learning, which is the other side of the coin, right? There's teaching and learning, we hope, go together, and we hope that the better we teach, the more learning there is. But learning takes place, as I was saying, in lots of different contexts. So someone who's coming into LEAPS is interested in thinking about learning in many different settings. And they may be interested in studying learning in communities, or learning in informal settings like museums or after-school clubs, or just learning across the lifespan. They might be interested in policy related to learning. How do we create laws and systems that help create better learning environments and better learning opportunities for people? In other words, LEAPS is a lens into learning for many, many people who are interested and find teaching or schools important contexts for learning, but not the only context. And who are also very interested in having a unique and different kind of educational experience that is very community engaged. And that's a thing that I lean into a lot with students and the program, students who are interested in the program, is that a cornerstone of LEAPS is what we call community engaged learning. The idea that you take what you're learning in the classroom and you take what you're learning from direct interaction with people and organizations in the community, and those things combined form the basis of what you're learning across the entire program.
So in talking about learning in community, you're really stretching the bounds of how one might think about the campus on which one learns, to include a typical context that most learners don't experience when they go to college.
A very important idea behind the establishment of LEAPS was that we could do more with the resources that a public research university like Michigan has to offer. If a student's engagement with the university is simply completing a checklist of courses in exchange for a series of grades to become a GPA, well, that's not good enough. We really want students to be able to engage with the big ideas that a research institution takes on, to becoming engaged with the research mission of the university, to become engaged with the public service mission of the university, and for the total of their experiences to be more than just a degree and a GPA, but to be a set of ways of thinking, a set of ways of engaging that help them set themselves apart in the world, that help them develop an identity as somebody who is ready to do challenging things. LEAPS does that by first rethinking the way courses are organized. LEAPS has a very carefully scripted sequence of courses that students take with their peers in a cohort that are designed to introduce them to a broad range of concepts across liberal arts and different professions. LEAPS uses community-engaged learning. Students are constantly engaging with community members and organizations, and the conversation between what they learn in those community-based settings and what they learn in the classroom is two-way, right? They're not taking knowledge from one and applying it to the other, knowledge from both places and applying it to both places. We're looking for LEAPS students to develop a singular focus that is driven by their passions, and then we help them choose courses from across the university matched with a community-engaged learning experience that they will have an extended engagement in that helps prepare you exactly for the area that you intend to go into. So an example of that might be somebody who's really interested in community-based health organizations. Well, that's great. There's a lot of important learning that happens in health settings, patient education, provider education, marketing, all kinds of things that have to do with learning that are really important. A LEAP student might take courses here at Marsal about learning, They'll take courses, we hope, in public policy that help them understand kind of the healthcare world. They might take courses in sociology, they might take courses from our School of Public Health, and we would have them working in a community engagement setting that was public health facing. Maybe that's a clinic, maybe it's a policy-based organization, maybe it's a hospital or other kind of setting where they're on the ground getting experience with what it means to do this kind of work in a particular community context like Detroit.
That's what I'm particularly curious about. In creating the types of learning experiences you were just describing, you would get students out of the Marsal Family School of Education and moving among schools and colleges here on the Ann Arbor campus of the University of Michigan. But to create the type of community engaged learning that you were just talking about, I know that an important part of it is to become a part of the LEAPS community in Detroit. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about the essential role of Detroit in LEAPS in the way that you move learners from Ann Arbor to Detroit to experience much of the learning that you were just describing.
LEAPS is built around the notion of partnership-based research, which is an area I know that you focus on. We believe that the best, most useful research questions are designed together with the people who will eventually benefit from that research. That it's a successful research is a blending of expertise. And the people who will be what we would call participants in the research, as opposed to, say, the researchers, are actually mutually able to contribute important ideas to that work. So the first thing is to help realign the way the university interacts with the city. It's very important for us that LEAPS become a part of Detroit, not just be an outpost of Ann Arbor and Detroit. For that reason, we really think it's crucial that our students spend at least that first year in residence on the Marygrove campus in Northwest Detroit. If you are only visiting the city from Ann Arbor, you will always be a visitor. By being a resident of the city, you really start to understand it in new ways, to find your way around, to become comfortable in ways that you really can't be if you're just dipping in and out, kind of a point-to-point relationship. So at the end of a year, our first cohort of LEAP students, there was a range of interaction, but they started to feel very close to different parts of the city and to understand that in different ways, especially the places that were doing their community engaged learning work. LEAP students will be able to move back to Ann Arbor in their sophomore year, but they'll continue to return to these community engaged learning placements over time. And having spent that first year there, it won't feel like a trip to some other place, but a trip back, right? A trip back to a place where they had a home, where they were able to feel comfortable. It's also very important to us that in this relationship, that the people who we work with in Detroit view us as a part of the city, as a resource, as partners. Not again as somebody who are there and they have some transactional relationship with us in which we get something and they get something. We really want them to feel like we're all working on something together and that together we create great value.
How is community engaged learning in LEAPS different from other forms of community engaged learning that students might be more familiar with?
I don't think anybody gets into the University of Michigan these days without having some form of community service in their high school experience. It's very important, and I'm very much in favor of it. But a lot of that community service can look like charity. So tutoring, food kitchen, you're giving back, right? I have a resource, I'm going to give that resource to somebody in the community, some group in the community that needs what I have. Again, there's value in this, right? I'm not downplaying that. But I do want to lean into the idea that most community organizations, community groups know what they want to do. They understand what they're doing. Their challenge is not lack of intelligent, creative people. It's lack of resources often. And the best thing we can do in community-engaged learning is to help our students learn through participation. So your job is to show up and do what needs to be done, not because you think it needs to be done, but because the organization, your host, thinks it needs to be done. It takes humility. It takes openness. You have to be willing to do the menial labor until you've earned the right to have bigger ideas, which honestly takes a little bit of time. And LEAPS is built to support that development because our vision of community-engaged learning, again, a shift from the way many students in college engage in practice worlds, which is in an internship or a short-term placement, maybe during a summer or during a semester. In LEAPS, our intention is that the partnership placement that you're in lasts for 2 or 3 or even 4 years. Over time, you become a part of that organization. You've earned the right to make observations about it and with it because you've been there long enough to truly understand what their work is. And you've even been there long enough to support new LEAP students coming behind you, helping LEAPS create a kind of engine of continuous growth and effort toward the goals of our partners.
In what ways is the student experience in LEAPS grounded in your experience as a researcher in the learning sciences?
As a learning scientist, one of the things I focus on is the design of highly engaging or high performance learning environments. LEAPS as a program is designed using all of what we have come to understand about what a high performance and engaging learning environment might look like at the college level. So this is in some ways the idealized version of college learning based on what the learning sciences has been studying for a number of years. And that includes a healthy mixture of learning in classrooms and learning in the world. It is about cohort-driven learning. It is about learning in which your continuous growth is more important than a grade you might earn. We have a lot of feedback built into the program. We have very close relationships between students and faculty. So that we try to keep courses in LEAPS relatively small, and we try to keep interaction with professors and staff and faculty at a very high level. So for a typical University of Michigan student, you'll be in very large classes as a first-year student. If you are intentional about it and a little bit lucky, you might develop a relationship with a faculty member through a seminar, or maybe you join a lab. And by the time you're a junior or senior, hopefully there's a professor or two that knows you reasonably well because you want those people for things like writing you a letter of recommendation. In LEAPS, you're going to see your faculty in multiple courses. We have a course called Forum, which is very much like homeroom used to be in high school, except that this is about making meaning and bringing things together. And it's also meant to be multi-generational, multi-year. So first, second, third, fourth year students all together in this space. You're getting mentoring not just from a professor in that context, but also from students who've been there before you. The community engaged learning context helps you widen your set of experiences. We use a version of mastery-based learning to help encourage the development and to monitor and mark the development of highly valuable skills across your entire academic career, both your course-based learning and what may happen in other places like clubs or activities, and especially your community-engaged learning, so that when you graduate from LEAPS, what you have is not a list of courses you've taken and a particular degree title, but you have that and a document we call the mastery transcript that lets you tell a story about yourself as a good leader, a good member of groups, as somebody who thinks about what the public good means and how to engage for the public good, thinking how you think across a broad array of areas, and also how you have developed a sense of yourself, right? So that's what people who hire you really want to know is, are you reliable? Are you creative? Are you resilient? That's what the mastery transcript is meant to document. And you have a set of experiences that you can talk about that illustrate all those points. So it's a program that is really designed with a purpose. The purpose is not to have you take a bunch of courses. The purpose is for you to develop in a particular way that we believe that our view of how people learn, both you as a student, but also like how you will support learning in the world, is ideally suited to.
What's interesting in what you were just describing to me is that The learner's taking so much more away, and the learner is doing so much more. So here, for example, you would expect to come out with skills and competencies. And what you were just describing, learners come out with an identity. Learners come out with a narrative. Learners come out with artifacts. Those dimensions of their experience, their identity, their story, their artifacts, are as central to who they become next as might be whatever skills and competencies they develop in a kind of technical sense.
Yeah, I think you put that very well. I'll illustrate a challenge we often face, which is that things we learn in the classroom don't always translate to application areas. So I've dealt with many students over the years who did very well in, say, introductory statistics. They earned an A in that class. And then in a later class that might be about data science or some other related topic where statistics is needed, they don't appear to know any statistics. And the answer is not that they didn't learn statistics in that class, but they learned statistics for that class. And when the same knowledge is called for in other settings, but it's not in a chapter that's about that topic, they simply don't recognize that that's the knowledge they need to call upon, nor do they have the hooks to try to connect it. That's why it's so important that people actually learn in real contexts. And that's why LEAPS is built to provide those opportunities. Now, there's a flip side to that. Students often get a little confused about why they're learning this right now or what this is good for. It takes there's a little bit of delayed gratification in a program like this because you're not working for each semester's grades. You're working towards something big that can be a little hard to get your hands around at first. It takes a little faith. And the faith is that things that I'm learning now start to make sense in context, and things that are happening in context that I can't make sense of will make sense later as I bring that conversation back to the classroom in various settings. There's this mix of opportunities, and the true value comes out of the experience as a whole, which is, again, a very different kind of experience than many students get from more traditional college degree programs.
Listening to you talk, I find myself wondering, what is it in the Marsal Family School of Education, what is it in the University of Michigan that opened up the space to create these new ways for students to learn?
LEAPS is able to take advantage of some relationships that already existed between the Marsal Family School of Education, the University of Michigan, and the city of Detroit, primarily through an organization called the Marygrove Learning Community, which is housed at the campus of the former Marygrove College, which unfortunately shut down in the mid-2000 teens. The Marygrove Learning Community is made up of an early childhood education center, of a Detroit Public Schools Community District, elementary, middle, and high school, an engagement with the Marsal Family School of Education with those schools and the early education center called the Michigan Education Teaching School, which is a context for our pre-service teachers to develop real-world experience in urban schools in particular, and a number of community organizations that are all overseen by an organization called the Marygrove Conservancy, which is a conservatorship, making sure that the Marygrove campus remains a public benefit. All of this is broadly supported by the Kresge Foundation and a number of other organizations. LEAPS is able to join with these organizations to bring undergraduate education back to Marygrove, bringing new life to what was once a very vibrant college campus, and helping complete what's viewed as a really prenatal, so pre-birth in the Starfish Family Services Early Education Center through career trajectory. So the Marygrove campus and the Marygrove learning community serves as a context for engaging with learning at many levels and from many different perspectives. And it's just a natural place to have LEAP students be engaging with a number of different kinds of organizations, whether those are schools or community serving groups or the community itself. And it's just a gorgeous and inspiring space too. So being there gives you that special feeling that you're engaged with something important and something wonderful.
so interesting to hear you describe this because it's so much more than college. It's so much more than campus. It's so much more than what most students experience when, as freshmen, they become a part of a big thing called a university. Do students feel like they're in college when they're a part of the LEAPS program in Detroit?
Students are very much in college, and that's important to recognize, and especially as incoming first-year students, it's just right after high school, and there's an important growth and development period you have to go through there. I think being in LEAPS is like being both part of the University of Michigan with all that comes with it, the football Saturdays and the vast resources, and being part of a small liberal arts school. So if you crave kind of the small personalized college experience, but also respect the power and reach of a major public university, LEAPS is a place you find both of those things. It's quite unique. Now the experience is different, and it's important to recognize that. I would never tell a student, oh, living in Marygrove, living in Detroit is just like being in Ann Arbor. It's not, but that's on purpose, right? We intend it to be different so that you get different kinds of experiences, and those experiences help form who you become in a very significant way. That is, I wouldn't say better or worse than the experience other students at Michigan have, but it is different and it is unique.
What's the student experience feel like for a first-year student?
Well, first you have classes. Some of your classes are at Marygrove. Those are your LEAPS-focused cohort classes, and they're at Marygrove for a reason, because we often interact with the community in various ways in those classes. Some of your classes are in Ann Arbor. Maybe it's the electives you take, there's the forum class that might meet in Ann Arbor, and we kind of bring you back and forth. So part of a LEAP student's life in their first year is on buses, for sure. Students report that as excellent time for nap taking, or just chatting. You also engage with some clubs in Ann Arbor, and many of our students did things like join the Michigan Daily, find various affinity-based clubs, apply to professional fraternities, and so forth. But ideally, what we want a LEAP student to do in their first year is to be exploring Detroit. And we work to create a number of contexts and opportunities where students can get out and explore the city around them, whether that's group visits to cultural sites like the museums, participating in music life around the city, various kind of clubs that are open for the 18 and older crowd, going to places like Eastern Market, taking walks through neighborhoods to observe public art, participating in some of the after-school activities around the neighborhood. There's a lot of things you can do shopping in Detroit, right? Just kind of learning what the different neighborhoods have to offer and what's out there. Detroit is a city that doesn't present itself very easily to the casual visitor. But once you learn to navigate it, you start to understand why people love the place so much, and why people are drawn to it. And ideally for us, this is a chance for LEAP students to become evangelists themselves for the city, right? To say, no, actually, there's more to see here than meets the eye.
Hearing you describe LEAPS, in every part about it, everything from the learner's experience to how to get students between Detroit and Ann Arbor, I found myself thinking that this wasn't a one-man job, that it must have taken something like a small army to get this program up and running. I'm wondering if you could tell me about your collaborators in Ann Arbor and Detroit and the work that you've done together to get LEAPS off the ground.
Yeah, it's absolutely true that building something like LEAPS takes a lot of different kinds of expertise and a lot of people's experience and hands to pull off. And it starts, I think, with faculty and staff here in Ann Arbor who are even interested in doing something that is different and more challenging. One thing I would say is academic programs usually only deal with academic stuff. But when you're starting a program that is in a new place, it's really a living learning community, you need to think about all elements of student life. So not just what you're taking during the courses, which as we know, make up a relatively small portion of a student's waking hours at university, but how they're engaging outside of the classroom. What are the opportunity spaces for them? What are social activities available? Dining, housing, roommate issues. You mentioned transportation issues, always present. Like, these are all things that we all think about in LEAPS that I didn't spend very much time thinking about before LEAPS. So it takes key colleagues. Leslie Rupert Herringcall, a faculty member here, a faculty colleague here at Marsal, was a key co-designer of most of the elements of LEAPS. We were very fortunate to have a number of students involved in the design of LEAPS. Nando Felton comes to mind first, but he was not alone. He was an undergrad here at Michigan. He earned a master's here at Marsal, and he was just admitted to our doctoral program. So he's really devoted himself to education, but has been very involved with community in lots of ways too. And he and some of his peers really were at the table with us, helping think about different elements of LEAPS. For many years, I taught a design seminar that engaged undergraduates and graduate students from across the whole campus to just think aloud and ideate and challenge and brainstorm and come up with different ideas for what might become part of LEAPS. And there are departments, there are staff members from across the school, whether that's people in recruitment and admissions, people in student affairs, people in marketing and communications, people in facilities, helping us think about elements of the program and the spaces and the logistics and how all these things might work. And of course, generous donors who create some space for us to do things that aren't part of the traditional budget that the university operates on. You encounter challenges in all kinds of surprising spaces when you try to do this work. When we started thinking about LEAPS, it was really blue sky. It was, what if we had a program with no courses or credit hours or grades? That quickly came down to earth because the registrar says, well, that's nice, but we need to know where people are at what times and how to manage course credits and tuition flow and financial aid. Like, there's some elements that can be challenged, but it's not smart to challenge them right out of the gate. You got to build from somewhere. So I would say there's a mix between what we originally, in our wild-eyed thinking, thought LEAPS might be and what's realistic to get rolling because of the way the university infrastructure is set up. Down the road, one thing we hope LEAPS is a lighthouse of sorts. So we are a program that really takes the idea of community engaged learning seriously. We're a program that is taking the idea of mastery-based assessment and building student portfolios as part of their learning record that they take with them seriously. We're a program that thinks about the articulation of different elements of the program so the courses speak to each other, so that the experiences students have inside and outside the classroom, we take that seriously. What does it mean to be a living learning community? We're taking that seriously and thinking about the broad range of activities as a whole. Any of these ideas are challenging on their own. They're super challenging together. But the things that work, we stand ready to help others around the institution take advantage of them. So the mastery transcript is a good example of this. That idea would not fly at all if not for valuable partnership from the Office of the Registrar. Now, the registrar is in charge of grades and transcripts, and our registrar thinks that we can do something better than grades and transcripts. And that's a fascinating place to start from, because the registrar's office has been a key ally in helping us make sure that a mastery record of learning is a part of the University of Michigan transcript environment for LEAP students. But having established practices and policies that make that possible, other units can take advantage of that. And we hope they do, and we hope we are able to guide them to make fewer of the mistakes we're making along the way, so that this can become a part of what the University of Michigan thinks is normal. And being the University of Michigan, when I speak to colleagues and other institutes, other places around the country about what we're doing in LEAPS, a very common response I get is, I hope you are successful at these things, because if you do them, that creates lessons for us to do them too.
You were just describing the novelty of so much of LEAPS in the way that it's challenged the university to think differently about so many of its routines, so many of its procedures. I'm wondering, what have you personally experienced as some of the steepest challenges in getting LEAPS up and running?
A big challenge, of course, is helping students overcome what they've been trained to do in high school. I think when I was in high school and applying to college, you could make an argument that high school education was fundamentally about preparing us for learning in college. Today, I think you could make a pretty strong argument that learning in high school is helping you prepare to apply to college, and not much beyond that. And so colleges for a long time have really struggled with learners' minds being entrained in a particular kind of call and response education. The teacher has the knowledge, the teacher transmits the knowledge, the idea of the student is to transmit it back, and if they do what you tell them to in a very precise way, they are rewarded for it with a good grade. That's a lot to overcome. It's not true of all of LEAP students, but LEAP students are coming out of the kinds of high performance high schools, the highly selective high schools that have been built around that model. So that's one challenge, right, is helping students embrace a new version of themselves as learners and recognize that it's actually better, right, that this is better than the previous model. Another challenge is dealing with some of the existing structures at the university. If I had my way, LEAPS classes would be only very rarely graded in the traditional A through F model. We would be much more mastery focused. That's challenging to do for a number of reasons. One reason it's challenging is because faculty aren't used to doing that. So the traditional way that we do grading is, I think, not easy, but it's easier than other ways of doing things. And people have gotten used to it, and changing the way faculty behave is a huge challenge. But on top of that, it turns out that you need a GPA in order to qualify for what the university calls satisfactory academic progress. And if the university can't show that you're making satisfactory academic progress, then you can't qualify for federal financial aid. And if the university can't show that for all programs, then the university can't qualify for federal financial aid. So I was informed early on that if you don't have a GPA for LEAP students, the university may lose federal financial aid. Wasn't going to go down that route. There are ways to change that, but again, not going to take that on right out of the gate. There's just no reason to. The way that finances flow across university is a challenge, right? It's very much driven by the school that a student is enrolled in, what's their home unit. So if a student is a Marsal student, but they're taking a course in LS&A, the tuition is split between the two units. That sounds fair, right? That makes sense. But it also makes it hard to design a program that has students taking advantage of courses all across the university, because you're starting off by saying, well, we're going to take less of the tuition dollars into our school. So you begin at kind of a structural deficit. The incentives in the system are not aligned to promote that sort of thing. So those are some of the challenges that we're facing. Learning habits people have, teaching habits people have, and institutional structures that make it a little hard to do something that's very different. Those are all the things that we're pushing against with our efforts.
I'm wondering, what are the big agenda items for the coming year in LEAPS that, in your view, would move LEAPS closer to this vision for community-engaged learning?
The first cohort of LEAPS, I think, was very successful. Better than I could have hoped for, actually. Not perfect, by any means. As students enter their second year, we are framing that experience as one of moving from foundations into deepening understanding and starting to build toward what we call their concentration. You could think of that as like your major within LEAPS, your upper division focus. What are you doing? What do you want to become? And that's meant within LEAPS to be a very customizable experience for a learner. So where in many places you would declare a major and then you would complete 10 courses and then we declare you a major of that. In LEAPS, we really want to declare a passion, not a major. And we want to help you explore that passion during your second year. Speak to people that are in that area, try to understand both what the kind of obvious and unobvious career paths are in that space. Most of the job market is actually made up of what people call hidden jobs. We may have a major set of labels for careers, but majors and careers hardly ever align. People find their way into all kinds of interesting positions based on what they know and want to do that helps an organization do what it is trying to do better. For example, Ford Motor Company employs user experience designers. They employ people who, for lack of a better term, could be called storytellers, trying to help the organization understand what it's trying to do and how it's trying to do it. And it's not as simple as we're Ford, we build cars. It's we're Ford, we're a mobility company. We're trying to think about mobility in lots of different settings. Even understanding that inside the company can be challenging, and there are people in roles that help Ford be a better version of itself. That's the kind of place that a LEAP student, I think, would fit quite well. And then there's lots of other spaces you could explore. So that's the big transition in the second year, is supporting students in that task, right, of exploring their passion, and then working with them to figure out, okay, now how could you pursue that using the resources of the University of Michigan and the resources of Marsal? And how can we identify a range of community engagement possibilities that give you the spaces where you can continue to deepen and explore that passion? Building our network of community partners is important for serving that first goal, but also important for establishing LEAPS as a part of the fabric of learning across the city. We've hired a fantastic community engagement specialist who is helping us build this network. And the work they're doing is not just about LEAPS, but they're really viewing their role as helping build capacity for learning in organizations across the city. And LEAPS is here to help play a role in that. And that's great to see. And we're out of the gate. We have 20 plus partnerships that are developing quite nicely. And we hope someday we have 200 or so partners across the city who are engaging with us, and we're engaging with them, and they're engaging with each other to build capacity, again, around this core idea of learning as a virtue in our organizations.
As I hear you talk about LEAPS, I can't help but imagine you as a high school senior looking at LEAPS thinking, this is the type of program I'd like to be a part of.
I am a recovering A student. I was very well trained in how to do what I was told with a high degree of fidelity at school. My college experience broke me of that a little bit by showing me that there's much more to it than just doing well in each course. And then it took a long time of really observing how learning happens as a learning scientist to become more and more dissatisfied with the experience I had and wanting it to be better for other people. So was I the kind of student who would have gone to LEAPS? Not when I was 18, but 100% I am now. And I have talked with high school students around the world who really resonate to it. One of the interesting things about LEAPS, and one of the challenges we have, is communicating just what it is to people, especially people that aren't used to thinking about a school of education as a place where you could come and do anything other than become a teacher. But when they hear about the program and when we tell them about it, a lot of them really light up. They're like, I didn't even know that was possible. And it's really appealing to them. It doesn't mean everything in it will take naturally or it'll be easy for them, certainly, but they like the idea of it. I know there's enough people out there who find the current system a little too constraining and find LEAPS really appealing that we're finding our audience.
What does it mean for you to be a learning scientist? And how does that connect to your ambitions for LEAPS?
The learning sciences is a complex field, and lots of people think it means different things, and they're all kind of right from their own perspectives. I had the privilege of being in one of the first groups of learning scientists, one of the first people to actually earn the learning sciences degree. And for me in my program, what the learning sciences was a combination of education, psychology, anthropology, and computer science. At the time, in the early 90s, we were thinking about artificial intelligence. Imagine that. I wonder if artificial intelligence would become a thing. And we were thinking about how to design systems that would help people be more effective in lots of different contexts. So again, this combination of ways of thinking about the world. I think my focus on a combination of education, psychology, anthropology, technology, if you think about technology broadly in terms of like the tools that we bring to bear on a problem, that's 100% reflected in how LEAPS looks, because we're trying to engage people in the world to help make our students good observers of the world. That's the anthropology. To help our students understand the way that people learn. That's psychology. But it's also education, right? How to design environments in which people can learn better. That's the fundamental divide between teaching and learning, and what also brings them together. And the tools, the technologies. We want students to understand that they can bring a lot of resources to bear, and there are a lot of resources being brought to bear, which are including artificial intelligence in today's environment, but just the kinds of things that people need in the space to be more effective at whatever it is they're trying to do. Those all come together and create a kind of holistic space in which, in many ways, a LEAPS graduate is a learning sciences student, right? They're learning about all these ideas in the context that would make them feel right at home in a conversation about the learning sciences.
Barry, thank you very much for finding time to join us in the Marsal Family School of Education Innovator Showcase series. It was really a treat to hear about your vision for LEAPS, to hear stories about the first year of LEAPS, to hear you begin to imagine what the second year of LEAPS is going to be like, and to really get to know the whole community of people that it's taken to get LEAPS off the ground. So again, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity. I hope that people that are interested in being a part of LEAPS will get in touch with us, whether you're a prospective student or a prospective partner, or just somebody who wants to participate in the program in some other way. I do encourage people to reach out to us, and we're looking forward to LEAPS becoming a really vital part of not just the Marsal Family School of Education, but of the University of Michigan and the city of Detroit.
Thank you for tuning into the Marsal Family School of Education's Innovator Showcase series, and special thanks to Barry Fishman for sharing his work on LEAPS. For more resources related to today's conversation, be sure to check out the links in our show notes, and don't forget to follow the Marsal Family School of Education on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube to stay connected with our community and to hear more about upcoming episodes. Thank you for joining us.